Estás escuchando PlanetaXLive.com. Descarga la aplicación en tu iPhone o Android Market.
Hi, Jennifer Villarreal here.
Hi, and I am John Gottschall.
This is the Sales from the Heart Show, the place where business meets heart and soul. And today I have a fabulous guest, as he just announced his name after I gave him a little elbow here.
Sometimes I need a nudge. Absolutely.
All right, so we have Coach Johnny G with us today. John, why don't you give our audience here a little blurb about who you are and why you do what you do.
Okay. Well, as mentioned, my name is John Gottschall, but most people call me Coach or Johnny G, because we like to have a little fun. And I am the owner, or El Presidente, as people call me, of Coaching Financial Concepts. And I started the company back in 1997, and we are a one-stop financial shop. So
Awesome.
We work with a lot of businesses, individuals for insurance and investments.
Yeah.
I know, boring stuff.
Yeah. Well, I like how you mix it up and you add the sports element to it. So when we refer to you as coach, it's not necessarily like a life coach, more a financial coach, but you combine the sports theme with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's two parts to it. One is I grew up in sports, so it's easier for me to explain sometimes, to people in a sports theme, especially guys. Mm-hmm. And women more these days too. They watch football now and baseball. But the reason I created it is that, insurance and finances, it's a continuous game. One day you could set a plan and tomorrow it's gone.
Right.
So it's more about coaching people through, understanding them and, where have they been and where are they going, and try and get them to understand the basics of things to make their lives better.
Yeah. We've talked on the show previously about some of the emotional downfalls that can happen when people are talking about money or when they're talking about their finances or lack of. Do you find that sometimes comes through when you're talking about people's financial situation?
You know what? Most of finances is really emotional. Mm-hmm. First of all, people have this feeling right from the start that they should know something because, I went to school. And most of the time, they know the basics of it, but they really don't know how to apply it.
Right.
Or what it does or what it doesn't do. They don't know understand the consequences and the pitfalls. And they never want to feel stupid, which is fine, and that's where what we try and do is get them to relax and say, hey, tell us what you don't know so we can educate you.
Right. So I'm assuming there's a lot of trust that has to be developed after that rapport, et cetera.
Yeah. So like for us, part of being a coach, the first things that we always focus on is building trust, building rapport, and helping people to feel comfortable.
Right.
Initially when
how do you do that? Do you stand up and do a little dance? I mean, how do you break the ice with something like that?
Well, actually, it just depends on the setting. So if I'm at a networking event, and somebody introduces themselves and they say, what do you do? I'll say, well, I produce romance films. just to get them to relax. And then, if it's a first time meeting or something, typically I'll have like a 1-page bio and say, hey, this is my history. This is where I've been. I've done it for a long time, but let's focus in on you. And once you turn the conversation onto them, and it gets them to relax. And also there's other techniques of rapport, like body language, your pace of speech, your volume,
Yeah, eye contact, the camera's right there.
Correct.
That one?
That one? Not that one, but
no,
that one? Okay.
It's that one. I saw you looking over here, but it's really that one.
Well,
so.
Eye contact, looking at the person asking the question. So,
right.
So you try and get them to a level of really telling you about their life and really actually listening. So where most salespeople, they ask a question, but they don't listen because they're on to the next question that they need to ask in their list.
Right. They're so caught up in their head. They're thinking what the next thing is to say. They want to be right. They want to try to convince somebody of something. And what you're telling me is it's not even about that.
No, not at all. In fact, one of my favorite meetings of all time was actually sitting down with a pig farmer. And we spent 2 hours talking about how they, the whole process and commodities. And I wasn't even didn't even talk about financial stuff from our end for 2 hours because it was just fascinating, what happens. And they produce like 300,000 pigs a year, and they're small.
Wow.
So just the nicest people in the world. So.
Well, I can tell. I mean, you really look at the lifelong value of your client, right? It's not just an individual transaction. You've been doing this for how many years?
22 now.
22. Wow. Yeah. So what?
Hence no hair.
So what got you into doing this? I mean, I think from what I know of you, you really had a passion for sports. But how did you combine maybe a couple of your passions here?
Well, it was interesting. My degree is in sports management. I have a minor in business, and I did want to get into professional sports. And the dream has always been to be a general manager of a sports team. However, getting into a sports organization is a lot of work, a lot of time. And back in the early 90s, you would make $750 a month and work 120 hours a week. So it just didn't seem equitable at the time. So I met a guy at a job fair at one of the big insurance companies, and he had a $1,000 suit on and $300 shoes. And I went in for an interview, and then I met the top wage earner there, salesperson, I guess. And like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. He wasn't exactly bubbling with personality, let's just say. So, then reality set in. One of the thoughts is that, hey, if I can't get in the first way, I'm just going to figure out a way to buy a team somewhere down the road. So I have big goals, big aspirations.
Love it. And you incorporated that theme. So, if we go to your website, you can see some of the sports theme there. What is your website, by the way?
My website is www.coachfinancial.com.
All right.
That's coachfinancial.com.
All right, John. So let's talk a little bit, because you mentioned some of the techniques that people use to establish that rapport, establish that trust. And, here at the Sales from the Heart show, we talk about being authentic, really just tapping into who you are, understanding who you truly work for, right? And that's some previous shows. We can give you more info on that if you missed that. But then, we also hear about some of the other techniques out there that are kind of slimy, kind of salesy, and really just quite annoying. Do you see that in your industry? And we don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but we're just going to call it out of how sometimes these slimy closing techniques or cheesy sales techniques really just aren't helping.
No, actually, first of all, I love the name Sales from the Heart, because that's how I conduct my business. And I think it's awesome, because if what you're doing isn't in your heart, you're not going to be successful. And it also, too, if you don't care about people,
right,
with your heart, you're not going to be successful. So that's first and foremost is what we believe. And then, getting into the cheesy stuff, I like to call it the financial drool. You ever walk into a networking event and, the guy says, hey, I'm with this insurance company or that investment firm, and you say what you do, and you're a business owner, and then you just see them start drooling like, money. Right. The thing is that all of these companies have very poor training, and then nobody takes the time to educate themselves on how to build rapport. They don't take the time to figure out how to communicate properly, and they don't take the responsibility. So you have, the same lines that, from one company to the next, because they're all learning the same thing.
Right. It might be an old school sales style or technique, and maybe it worked at one point. Correct. I don't know, but things have changed, and so the typical approach and methods aren't serving your client. They're not serving that prospect. They're not serving you as efficiently as it could.
Correct.
So,
and it's created a perception. So that's why when I meet somebody, it's like, I'm in the romance film business, so it gets them to laugh. Whereas most people are like, hey, I'm at XYZ company. Have you ever heard of Whole Life? Or, have you bought health insurance yet? Or, who's your auto company? And, you have this over eagerness instead of trying, just having a conversation about that person and where they are in their life.
Right. So. Yeah, we've talked about this too, where you go to a networking event and the first thing out of somebody's mouth is, hi, so what do you do? And I know that might seem natural of what you're supposed to say at a networking event, but sometimes after you keep getting approached by 5 people, 10 people, 15, it gets really boring. It gets annoying. It's like, hey, can we just have a conversation? Because if I was to see you somewhere else, you probably wouldn't just automatically say, hey, what do you do? And again, I know you're at a networking event, but you can maybe ask that maybe the third or fourth question. Or how about switch it up and say, why are you so passionate about the industry that you're in? And you can say, hey, what brought you to this event today? Or do you know the host? Do you know the organization, right? And mix it up a little bit.
Exactly. And actually, this one guy who, an old school insurance agent once taught me, he's like, when you go to these events, compliment somebody. Say, hey, nice bag, nice shoes. In my case, it's always nice hair, So, compliment them and just try and focus in on, how did you get here today?
Right.
What brought you here? And really ask questions about them and their life instead of figuring out if you can make a sale to them at that moment or time.
Right. And I think when we met at, it was an all-chapter Small Business Advocacy Council meeting, or was it the holiday party?
It was the holiday party.
There you go. So the SBAC, and you just had this vibe about you. You were laughing, you were mingling with people, you were approachable. I think that's a big difference too, where you don't even have to necessarily say anything. You can just be smiling.
Correct. Actually, one of the great tests, and I've done this before, is walk into a room where I know nobody and just sit there and smile, and people wonder why you're smiling. And so they'll just walk up. And
It doesn't look a little creepy?
Well, it depends on the venue. Absolutely. But most people, if you're in a suit and tie or dressed appropriately, if I was in, overalls, yeah, it would definitely be creepy. No offense to anybody wearing overalls, but
unless
at
you
the
were,
wrong venue, the wrong
at the
time.
pig farm or something, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, if you treat people like they're people and not a sales unit, I think you get a better response. And actually, if you go out to build a relationship, and actually one of the old techniques and cheesiness is, asking them for their business right there on the spot, or asking for a referral on the spot before you ever built any trust or rapport or credibility.
Yeah, that is a cheesy technique, or just throwing your card in somebody's face right away. Let's also remember, though, that some people might not be aware of how to do it differently. And so before we completely shut them down, we might want to engage in that conversation, right? And maybe introduce a different way, not necessarily by telling them, hey, you shouldn't do that, but through your actions, how you can switch the conversation and inform them, and again, through your actions.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And, people want to work with people they like, and you have 30 seconds to make an impression. And actually, it's even faster than that, because they're reading your body language, and it's a subconscious thing. So if you're tense and only focused in on what you have to say instead of being relaxed and listening to what others have to say, you're going to get a completely different response.
Right.
Now,
let's keep in mind, though, that there are some people that go to events, or they don't really want to, but they force themselves because they're an introvert. What would you say to the introvert?
I would, for an introverted person that is coming out of their shell, first of all, congratulations, because that is a hard thing to do. And secondly, what I would do is find somebody that maybe is dressed similar to you, maybe is also looking a little nervous or quiet, and approach them. Because in a group of 20, you're going to find 3 or 4 people that have a hard time talking to others, and that can be your first person to talk to.
Right.
Because it's an easier way, because they're nervous too.
Right.
And so,
and asking questions, you don't have to be the one that talks all the time, right?
No.
So you can ask the other person a variety of different questions. Again, what brought them here, why they're passionate about what they do, who's their ideal target audience, and hopefully they're not saying everyone.
that sounds like a little dig.
I know. We had this conversation. So who do you usually work with, John?
I work with anybody that asks for help. Really. And it goes against the grain of everything.
Especially from a marketing perspective. We're working on this one.
Correct. And the reason that I say that is when I first started in business, I went to the bank to get a loan, right? And they turn you down. Oh, you don't have enough money. And then, as I've gone through the years, we'll meet other financial people, and someone will walk up and say, hey, I like you. You seem to know what you're doing. Can you help me? And they turn around and say, well, how much money do you have? And you know what? I just feel that person right there that's seeking the help may or may not be a good fit, personality-wise, but they came to you because they trust you and the credibility. Right. And, I just flip the shoes around and say, how would I feel?
Right.
And so,
And I think it's really important here,
Yeah.
John, that somebody's financial situation can change. Whether they have an abundance of wealth or they don't have a lot right now, that can shift
right,
pretty quickly, right?
very quick.
And so that's why it's important to connect with a financial advisor, a financial coach, somebody that can guide them through that process. And what I hear a lot from people is that, oh, well, I don't have enough now, so I'll wait.
Right.
But why is that not a good, thought process there?
Well, you never, you know what? If you have a vision or a goal, you need, if you don't have enough, that's okay. But you need to start putting things in place.
You need to have a
So,
game plan, right?
A game plan, and you also need to set the intentions, right, of where you want to go. And also you need to educate yourself. The biggest thing in finance, whether it's investing or insurance, is people don't educate themselves, and then they trust people, and they don't ask enough questions. And so you need to sit down with any salesperson, ask tons of questions, get all the facts, because that person is going to only give you as much advice as the education they have.
Right.
And so,
Do you think it's important for people to meet with maybe a couple different financial advisors before they decide to partner with one?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think in it's kind of like buying a car, right? You should go to a couple different places, just not go to one place and that's it. You should test drive a couple to really understand what it is that you like. And the same with financial people. We've all been taught, we've all been taught different concepts, techniques, and then we have our preferences as to what makes sense. And me as a coach, I've made the decision to understand them all so I can apply them. So, like you'll see in the news, like one day you'll read that mutual funds are bad because they have high expenses, and the next day you'll read they're good, or you'll talk to somebody that actually they're very comfortable and done very well. So each concept applies to everybody differently. So you got to understand what it is you're doing. And if you don't understand what you're doing, or if they don't understand you or where you want to go, and they're just pushing one thing to get there, then maybe that's not the best thing.
Right. So what if somebody's been with their financial advisor for 5 years, 10 years? I mean, should they check with somebody else or just stay with that person? I mean, how do you know when you're getting the best advice or the right advice for your plan?
Well, that's why you need to do a double check every year. Or, first of all, go back to your advisor. If you like them and they trust you and you believe that they've been doing a good job, they probably have. But the question is, you should ask questions like, okay, what do you do for your education? Have you looked at this investment versus that investment, or this insurance plan versus that insurance plan? What are you additionally doing to learn different concepts? Are you working with other professionals, for tax advice, legal advice, and how does what I'm doing apply to those things?
Now, don't you think the financial advisors should be checking in with their clients and doing that?
They should.
Yeah,
They
but
should.
that's not always the case, is it?
More times than not. I would say, about first of all, there's huge turnover in the insurance and financial services business. So that's one that makes it tough. But two, it depends on that person. Are they motivated to do better? And you want to find that out. And so, the other part of our business, and there's a significant part, is, they've learned one way to make a sale, and they're doing it because they need to make a living, which is okay. But maybe they're not always doing what's in the best interest of the client because they've only learned this one way. And it can work, don't get me wrong. It can be the right thing at the right time, but
It sounds like there's a lot of variables here.
Correct.
And when I think of that, it sounds confusing. It sounds overwhelming. And so then I'd rather not even deal with it. What would you tell somebody like that? Because I hear that all the time from clients where they're just like, oh, I'll get to it later. And then before they know it, they're in their 40s or in their 50s. They haven't planned for retirement. They haven't done the things that they should be doing. What kind of advice would you give somebody?
First of all, it's kind of like that old saying that 1,000-mile journey starts with the first step. So you do need to take the first step and sit down with somebody or ask your friends, who do they work with? What advice have they gotten? Read a book. There's some fabulous books out there.
Any recommendations?
Well, investing wise, I like Peter Lynch. Robert Kiyosaki definitely has good books. He gets into just understanding what your expenses are of today. Actually, everybody has to stretch their dollar between paying for today, protecting what they have, and investing for the future. And it's a tough juggle.
Right.
And,
Even when we just talk about budgeting with some people, right? They think that they're restricted. They think that they're not going to have any fun, any freedom, any flexibility, and quite frankly, it does the opposite.
Right.
But they don't know the proper method of budgeting, or they're doing it after the fact. Oh yeah, I looked and I saw what I spent last month. Okay, I stayed within my budget. No, it's not about that. Every dollar should have its name, right?
Right.
And have a place.
Exactly. Or work with a coach. Because it's really overcoming your fears.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the specialties that I'll help people with is doing just that basic. We're not going to go under the hood. I would refer my clients to somebody else. So you would be one. I have a few other people that I would refer them to, and then they get to make their decision of who they want to work with. But if you're looking for those basics and budgeting tools and, and developing the mindset about that, I've extended this offer before. Please contact me, info@salesfromtheheart.com. So what else? So you said some books.
Yeah, I would start with just sitting down reading a book or just reading the paper, the business section. On Sunday they do have some, a couple of things in there where they talk about personal finance. Or actually, I've written articles for the Des Plaines Journal, Rosemont Journal. And once a month, I have an article in there on, how to improve your financial life.
Right.
And so.
But let me be honest here, John. So if somebody is a little afraid of doing that stuff, or it's not top of mind for them, it's going to be challenging for them to even go there.
Correct.
So don't you think the best thing to do is just pick up the phone and contact somebody who really enjoys doing that? I mean, is there any obligation? Are they going to be charged for just meeting with somebody or talking about these things?
Well, it depends on the individual. 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to get charged. Initially, there's going to be a free consultation. And basically what people will, a good financial person will sit down and actually do an evaluation of where you are in life. And so from a sales standpoint, every person should sit down and evaluate where you've come from and where you're going and where are you today, and figure out what your resources are. And then from there, they should be able to educate you and then give you some options. And whether you're ready for those options today or 5 years, doesn't matter. At least you have a map or a blueprint of where they're going. So, and it should feel like a more of an, and the reason you want to go to a few people is to figure out who you feel comfortable with that aligns with your vision and your thoughts and makes you feel good.
Right.
So
that's great. Good. So we talked about some of the things that could irk us a little bit, some of the things that make us a little afraid. Also, I think there's sometimes we have these challenges that we all face. People will see a guest or myself or other people and they think, oh my gosh, their lives are perfect, And that's not always the case. We all have our own internal challenges. We have business challenges. We have little things, but the difference is that we keep taking
challenges.
Challenges, yes. Even if you have hair, right? I talked about this on a show recently. Like, my hair, I just want to chop it off. And then I saw your picture and I'm like, no.
In the summer, it's great, but in the winter, I need a hat.
So, we all have something coming up. What are sometimes maybe a challenge that you face in business?
In business these days is there's a couple of different challenges. One is that I do have a big heart and that we are willing to help everybody. So
does that cause a time thing?
It's a time thing. So the time management, because we're always wearing the fireman's hat, and so that for me has been the big issue because whether it's the insurance company that's creating the fire or the investment company or the client themselves, you always seem like you're putting out fires instead of sitting down and really working. So you start with a plan for the day. Right. And then the plan is basically, doused with water.
Wow, this is a common theme that I've heard actually over the past week or so with a few people. And it's like we're focusing on the things that are urgent, but then what about the things that are important? And before we know it, we're just spinning around in circles, putting out those fires. Right. And so I think it's really important to carve out whether it's one day, a few hours in a day, maybe it's 15 minutes, whatever it may be for you, that you focus on those things that are important as well.
Right.
Right.
And that, that's why working with a coach is really good because those are things that you help people with to figure out, what's really important and why. Is that
Right.
kind of what you do?
Exactly.
Did I spell that out? Softball.
Exactly. So, that's it's really important because sometimes it's the other stuff that's going on in our mind. Oh my gosh, I'm not being good enough, or what is my family going to say, or I have this deadline that I have to hit financially, or I have my sales goal, and whatever it may be, and it's clouding our focus. It's clouding what really is a priority or not.
Right.
And when we operate from that state of chaos, we're not gonna function very well. We have to get neutral. We have to operate from that place of peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my biggest challenge, and why I've gone to coaches in the past, is really to set aside that time to figure out, what's important, where I want to go. Because
Yeah.
once you sit in the office, like once I go in, I could be on the phone for 6 straight hours,
Right.
and not getting to the things that are important. Because I'm not that these fires aren't important, but they take on a
Those are
different
more
life of
urgent.
itself.
Those
Yeah,
are urgent, but we
correct.
still need to focus on the things that are important.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And also, when we talk about time management, it's really about behavior, right? It's managing our behavior because we all have the same amount of hours in a day. And so we just have to restructure some of those things. And also, it's maybe another evaluation of where you're at in your business. You might have grown to another level. And so we have new things that can rise from that. We might have to adjust and make some differences, some changes here, and maybe even handing over some responsibility, which could also mean that we have to release that control and not trying to do it all.
I think she's hinting that I have a control issue, and I do. As as a business owner, and I probably do run into this a lot, that a lot of business owners, we have to control the message and control the thought process and the whole, and it's really hard to give up control, which, going to a coach, I've become better at, but still need a lot of work.
Yeah.
um,
And that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's never going to be perfect, and we have to be okay with that. And sometimes when we get past the idea of having to do something perfect, and we can take imperfect action, right? But we're still doing the appropriate steps and the things where we're not going all the way out here. And that's where the coach kind of brings you back in, just like what you do with your clients from a financial perspective.
Yeah. So, how do you, because I think a lot of us, it's not only control, but it's fear. So how do we overcome that?
Yeah.
Those things, because really, I think it's honesty with ourselves, right?
Right. So it can come in the form of a variety of different manners. It can be through procrastination. So we're trying to self-sabotage because we're trying to do something so perfect. And instead, we'll delay on something and we'll blame it on that. Oh, I just didn't have enough time, or my team couldn't help me the way that they should have because we did it last minute. And, oh, I didn't prep enough for this. We'll just blame it and keep making these excuses. Yet we're never getting to the root cause of what it is. And sometimes that means we have to step back. It can be rooted from childhood. And again, this isn't therapy, but it's really important to address, where those wounds are coming from because you replay them out in different scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my childhood had something to do with it.
Yeah.
It was a great one, but
Yeah. We
that,
all have something.
that subconscious thing, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or thinking, hey, it can't be done a different way. And one of the reasons why we go there and we say it can't be done a different way is because we don't want to look at ourselves and say, oh my gosh, there was a different way and I wasted all this time, or I made this so difficult for myself, or, ignorance sometimes is bliss, right? And people just want to live there. And so sometimes we just don't know what we don't know that
Very
we don't
true.
know, right?
That's true. I think that's, from a coaching standpoint, is that the toughest thing, but also the most rewarding, is being that honest voice for somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you build that relationship, you have that rapport, especially from a coach and client standpoint, it's different than a family member or friend.
Right.
Sometimes that family member or friend will project their fears onto you. They'll project, I just want you to be safe, or I want you to have enough money, or I want you to have security. But that's also their own insecurities, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and do you find that people, when you don't have a coach or someone, even that's from what I do and what you do, is that I think it's the honesty with ourselves that we don't try and justify what we're actually thinking. So sometimes we need that voice to say, really, are you trying to justify that?
Right, exactly. Or just hearing yourself say that.
Right.
So when you're speaking with your coach and you hear yourself talking out loud, or you start to hear you're giving contradicting thoughts here because you're saying it out loud. And it really provides more clarity. And that's one of the things that we do with a strategy session. So whether you're looking for that next business breakthrough, to skyrocket your sales, or maybe something more on the personal front, I'd like to offer you that complimentary strategy session. It is via phone, and of course I do work with clients nationwide, so we prefer it to be via phone, although we are local here in Chicago. Just simply get in touch with me by sending an email. So you can send that to info@salesfromtheheart.com. Just put on there complimentary strategy session in the subject message, and then I'll go ahead and honor that for the first 7 people that send that over.
So
I just picked 7. I don't know why. I think we did that last time.
Well, 7's a good number.
Yeah.
It's lucky.
There you go.
Especially at a casino, 7 hot dice coming out. So, so with the strategy, so you do it over the phone instead of in person, like over coffee or something like that. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, because I work with clients all over the place, so I don't really necessarily want to fly out to Canada, or actually maybe I do want to take a trip here and there. But
is beautiful.
It just makes it a little bit more efficient. And then also they're really powerful. A lot of times people think you just have to have this face-to-face interaction.
Right.
And although that is important, it's also really important to leverage your time in your business as well. And also for the clients, sometimes they have limited resources or limited time too.
Do you find that you're able to listen better because it's over the phone and it's not distracting?
I do, and I find that my clients actually reveal, or the people that I'm talking to with the strategy sessions, they can get more in tune with their emotions.
Okay.
So sometimes it allows them to process a little bit more. I mean, we're not doing this when they're driving. We're not doing it when the kids are, running around in the background. They have to have that dedicated time and space for themselves. But we organize that and set that up on the calendar when they call or send me an email. So.
Okay. So you don't want to see me cry. Is that it?
It might make me cry. We had one show where Rocio started crying, and I was looking at her, and then it made her cry even more. And man, that did get to my heart a little bit. But I've learned also how to just allow these things to pass through, and it's good to release those emotions. And I would say my men clients get more emotional than my female ones do, and I think it's because they're taught that they have to be that strong, voice, that strong presence in the workforce and at home. And, come on, guys cry too, right?
Yeah.
So they have emotions too.
We do?
Yeah.
No, really?
I can make you cry right now.
Really? How can you do that?
I'm just kidding. This guy, all we do is laugh. We're like crying from laughter. You do definitely have a sense of humor that is...
well, thank you.
Yeah.
You're going to make me blush. No, stop. I'm out of here.
Well, actually, we are about to wrap up the show here. So any other last-minute tips or ways that people can get in touch with you, John?
Well, if they go to my website, www.coachfinancial.com, or if you want to call me at 847-813-5511. If I'm not there, just leave a message and we will get back to you. I do have a staff of 3, and they're all wonderful, fun, friendly, and, you can just call us and ask us a question, and we're happy to answer it.
Now, I did hear a little rumor, though.
What?
That you, a little rumor that you prank call your clients. Is that true?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. In the middle of the day, people are always focused in on what's going on. And so, I've been hung up more times than not, but I will ask, did you order a pizza? And so then they'll be like, what, huh? And then, I'll call back if they hang up, and I'm like, hey, that was me. And they're like, oh, so we have a nice laugh, breaks up the day.
And you send them a pizza?
Every once in a while.
Aw.
Yeah, every once in a while, yeah.
All right, well, I like cheese, pepperoni, extra thin and crispy. Just letting you know.
Okay, we can, you know what? Pizza.
There we go. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe on the Sales from the Heart YouTube channel, as well as Blend the Eckies, and make sure that you check out this guy here, Coach Johnny G.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely.
It's been wonderful. And everyone go to Sales from the Heart website and sign up because you got great stuff.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good job.
Thank you.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, absolutely.